Hi everybody, welcome to K-Care cost share program under technology localization program. Hope to have strong participation from industry in our program. The purpose of today's webinar is to go over the detail of the technology localization program. For that, I would like to introduce Mr. Russ Jones, the expert at the program. I hope you will have a fulfilled session with him.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. As Hisham said, my name is Russ Jones. I'm a technology advisor for the Technology Localization and Commercialization Group and also the R&D group here at K-Care. And what I'm going to do is walk you through all of the most important details of the RFPs. We've released 9 RFPs, and if you read them, you'll find that they're all structured essentially identically. So we'll go through what the requirements are for those. Okay, as outline of the talk, just first talk about K-Care's overall mandate and how this program fits into that. And then I will talk about the Technology Localization and Commercialization Initiative and the RFPs that we have released under this. We'll cover the key requirements, the different technology topics that are being released, and we'll finish with an example of what we would regard as a fully responsive RFP. Okay, K-Care's mandate, K-Care was formed by a royal decree, and this slide summarizes at a top level what K-Care's roles and responsibilities are in the kingdom. And I've highlighted certain words in here that are particularly important in terms of what we're doing today. K-Care, first of all, has the role of fostering R&D, localizing technology, coordinating the activities of various institutions within the kingdom for atomic and renewable energy, and determining priorities and national policies. And some of the purposes, or some of the things that K-Care can do in order to achieve those purposes, it says motivate the private sector to develop research and products. And I also highlighted to establish and operate projects either independently or jointly with others. So you'll find that these programs are structured to do just that. So a key aspect of what we're doing, you'll see that this is not like the normal or typical Saudi government procurement. We're doing something that is widely practiced throughout the world, and we're introducing that with these programs in Saudi Arabia. And that is to use cost-sharing type contracts to do the projects in a public-private partnership, if you will. You could find programs very much like this as examples, the Horizon 2020 program in Europe, or the DOE Sunshot program in the United States, or virtually any United States DOE program is conducted as a cost-sharing type program. And it's fair to say that what we're doing is modeled on those programs. Okay, so we've gone through a process within K-Care to really think about what the opportunities and priorities for the kingdom should be in terms of renewable energy initiatives. And it's worth also mentioning, I think everyone in the audience is probably familiar with what REPTO is doing, which is utility scale, big scale projects And this program is not aimed at directly supporting that, but is aimed at being complementary to it. And you'll see that we have identified application areas in renewable technology that are of high value and critical to KSA, and we've identified technologies within those broader themes that we think are good candidates for localization and commercialization. And what these RFPs represent is now us reaching out to industry to identify the specific localization projects that will implement those broader topic themes. So these are the 9 RFPs that we have released, and I'm going to go through really a top-level description of each of the technical areas in a minute, but I wanted to just cover the key aspects of sort of the program rules. All of the programs are slated at being 36 months, and you'll see from the RFPs that part of the program execution is expected to generate data that will be shared with KCARE so that we can document the performance of the systems and show the benefits to the kingdom for our future programs. And the financial amounts that are shown here are the maximum available KCARE cost share for any of the programs. And I'll describe in a minute just to be perfectly clear about what cost share means, but just to say it now, the total project cost is borne by the recipient and by KCARE, and we pay a share and you pay a share, and this is the amount that KCARE could pay. So the total project cost is some number that's bigger than this. It's very important to tell you that this is not like one award per topic. In fact, we hope to make multiple awards in every topic. We reserve the right to make no awards if we don't receive any good proposals, but we could make 3 or 4 or even 5 awards in some of these areas if we receive a sufficient number of well thought out, well justified proposals. The cost share, I'm going to go into that on the next slide. The cost share is really based on technical maturity. So many people are probably aware of the definition of technology readiness levels, but if you're not, it is a sort of a standard international term for measuring how mature a technology is. And on the left-hand side here, we see the sort of generic definitions of technology readiness levels. And on the right-hand side, you'll see how we have thought about that for our own program, and we've put technology readiness levels in terms of technology localization in the kingdom that we think are appropriate and match the internationally accepted definitions. So with that, we've really given you a wide range of possibilities in cost share, because we recognize that the projects that may be proposed could come from a wide variety of readiness levels, and we want to accommodate the possibilities of things being anywhere from very mature, in which we would not expect to pay much cost share, to things that actually have some degree of technical risk that has to be resolved, in which we would expect to pay a higher cost share. I think it is also fair to say that we're targeting programs that are in this TRL 6 to 7 level with 50% cost share as the main expectation. But every proposal will be evaluated first for its cost realism and reasonableness, and secondly as to whether the cost share that's being asked for is reasonable under those circumstances in order to make a commercial project viable. And can't emphasize enough that cost share, as is project cost share is also a major evaluation factor. So the key message here is you should not propose more cost share than you need to make the program viable, and your proposal will be considered in competition with every other one along those lines. So we're also doing something maybe a little different in that we have a two-stage application process, and those two stages are sort of like a pre-qualification followed by an RFP. The pre-qualification in this case is a concept paper that you're required to submit, and I'll go over the required contents of that, but it's brief. It's only 6 pages, and it will identify what it is you plan to propose, who's your teammates, etc. And we will evaluate all those concept papers and then invite you to submit a full proposal. If your concept paper lays out something that we think is not in compliance with the program guidelines, we will tell you. When you are invited to do the full proposal, you'll see in the RFP that's all defined. This is, again, not like a normal Saudi procurement proposal, that we're requiring a lot of information that is not normally required, but certainly when we're talking about a cost sharing proposal in which you're doing a commercial demonstration that you will own, not KCARE, we have to put a higher degree of scrutiny. So we will expect to see a technical volume. We expect to have a consortium agreement if the cost share is being provided by anyone other than the bidder. That's not required if the bidder is providing the cost share. We need a full disclosure of the finances of the project. You'll define your own scope of work for the project, which will become part of your contract. And you're required to submit a business plan. This is an important point. The business plan demonstrates that this project you're proposing is a first step in commercializing a renewable energy business in Saudi Arabia. And finally, an IP agreement that demonstrates your ability in terms of the IP that's necessary to run the business, that you actually will have the rights to do that. And I'll come back to each of those points as we go through. So the first thing is bidder eligibility. And the primary rule here is that the prime bidder has to be a Saudi for-profit entity. We are open to the participation of any kind of entity in this. You could have academic, you could have an industry coalition, you could have other Saudi companies, you could have foreign companies, foreign universities, whatever. Any of those things are allowed. But the prime bidder has to be a Saudi company, and that has to be the company that has the business case to carry this business forward. There's no limit to the number of concept papers that any company can submit, even for the same topic. We're open to as many concept papers as you want to submit, and we will evaluate and respond to each concept paper. So just to be very clear on the cost share requirement, I have a couple of definitions here. The recipient or the recipient team is the prime bidder and the prime bidder's team. And the total award size is the sum of KCARE's funds and the recipient's funds. And so the recipient cost share is the recipient's contribution divided by that sum, and the KCARE cost share is KCARE's contribution divided by that sum. The recipient's contribution can be any combination of private entity funding or public funds, including other Saudi government funding sources, any source other than KCARE, basically. So if you are working with a Saudi government entity doing something that has a potential renewable component that fits into this program, otherwise you're welcome to do that. You could have a plan to build a commercial renewable energy plant, and the beneficiary of the electricity produced by it can be a cost-sharing partner if you want. Those are all possibilities, but it's important to note that the bidder is the one our contract is with, and the bidder is solely responsible for managing the cost share contributions and fulfilling those contractual requirements to KCARE. It's also want to say that this is a cost reimbursement program, and so the way it will work is that the eligible costs will be reimbursed based on independently audited invoices and your milestone achievements. So you have to have, as a bidder, you have to have the ability to finance the project because you won't receive the money in advance. You receive the money after you've incurred expenses, then you submit to receive the KCARE cost share. This is the important dates in the RFPs, and actually I want to point out that there was an error in the RFPs for the renewable poly generation, demand side management, and renewable energies and buildings. Those are all going to be revised to a 7th of April concept paper due date. So you'll see a revision coming soon. And the full proposal due date for those is slated to be 20th of June. So those are all delayed 1 week from the first 4 that are shown here. Now I'm going to just tell you what our objectives are in each of these technology areas. And what I want to say about that is that this is not meant to be in any way prescriptive of the kind of solution you should propose, but it is intended instead to be suggestive of the kind of systems that we believe fit under these topic areas. We want to really encourage companies to be creative and to actually bring us proposals that the companies believe are commercially viable, because this program is about supporting Saudi companies to start viable businesses, and it really is going to be defined by you and not by us. So the first topic that I mentioned here is the solar heat for industrial processes. So we believe that there's a big opportunity for using concentrating solar not to produce electricity, but to provide process heat. And as you know, the REPTO program is including concentrating solar power for electricity generation. We are trying to emphasize the alternative of process heat, so without a power block producing electricity. And some of the figures that make us think that this is a good idea is that industrial processes worldwide consume about 33% of all the energy in the world, but only about 0.001% of it is solar heat. So we think there's a huge opportunity, and we're certain that there's opportunities within Saudi Arabia for that. So this shows 2 different possibilities. You could have flat plate that's providing fairly low temperature process heat versus concentrating that would provide higher temperature. So that would depend on what kind of process is being served. Solar cooling. We have an RFP entitled solar cooling, but I want to emphasize that that does not mean that we are just looking for absorption chillers, or what people normally maybe in the literature refers to as solar cooling. But what we're looking for is any cooling application that's driven by solar energy. So that could be something such as direct DC chillers that are designed to be able to operate on the variable power supply of DC solar panels, or it could be systems with hybrid evaporative cooling. And by my previous comment, I did not intend to rule out absorption and absorption chillers. So we're open to, but I guess the important point here is that cooling is such a huge amount of the demand in the summer in Saudi Arabia. It's something like 70% of the total electric demand. And we think there's a lot of possibilities for solar to help to address those loads, which also occur. The peak cooling loads are coincident with the peak solar resource availability. So this is a great opportunity for the kingdom. We are very interested in shallow geothermal cooling. We think that this is a great opportunity for the kingdom. It has not been exploited here, but it is an established technology in other parts of the world. But there are some key challenges here, because in most places where shallow geothermal is employed, those are locations in which there's both a heating and a cooling season, in more temperate climates, in other words. And in Saudi Arabia, we have almost all cooling loads and very little heating loads. So there's a challenge in designing a system that will effectively address that issue without depletion of the resource by continually trying to extract cool from it. So we think there's great opportunities there. We hope to see some innovative proposals. We have a topic for energy storage, and we intend that to be quite broad. Many people think of energy storage as batteries for PV, and there's certainly opportunities there for that. But we also want to expand the thinking there to include, could be hot thermal storage or cold thermal storage. And those could be serving in loads. Certainly in cold thermal storage, the typical use of cold thermal storage is to use nighttime power to offset daytime loads. We think that the opportunity in the renewable industry is to reverse that and use daytime power from PV to offset nighttime loads in Saudi Arabia. So we are looking for proposals across all of these possible areas. Renewable energy integrated microgrids. Microgrids are often thought of as being things for isolated communities, and there are isolated communities in Saudi Arabia that have real needs for microgrids, but there's also commonly in Saudi Arabia, there are large loads in the urban centers that are inadequately served by the local substation. And there are many facilities that are using some sort of auxiliary generation, and it's often dirty diesel generators that could be upgraded with microgrids. And so we think there's a real opportunity for business in the kingdom in this area, and we hope to see some proposals along those lines. So in contrast to microgrids, the difference between that and renewable polygeneration systems, at least as we are looking at it, is a microgrid is an electrical power system, whereas a polygeneration system is some sort of a combined heat and power system, where you may be serving both electrical loads, cooling loads, heating loads, desalination loads. Any of those things could be combined. These types of systems are systems that are engineered to use these multiple energy flows to get really optimized efficiency. We're aware that there are some systems like that already in Saudi Arabia, and we think there is opportunity for growth in that arena. Okay, demand management. Demand management means managing user loads in a way that that offsets their peak use. There's really three different. They may seem they're all very closely related, but they're slightly different in terms of their impact or what the goals. You could be attempting to shift loads, for instance, to shift the evening peak load into the daytime when you have more solar power available. Or it could just be to do peak clipping, or you could be using it to shape loads. These are all highly interrelated. Demand management could be used in the same ways for the same reasons as the microgrids. And we could imagine that a demand management solution might be in combination with a microgrid program. But as a for instance, if you have a large facility that is connected to a substation that's unable to serve those peak loads, you might have a demand management program or mechanism within that facility to keep the load under what's being served by the substation. And again, we think there are many examples of situations like that in Saudi Arabia that creates a business opportunity that someone could address. So now, renewable energy in buildings. You'll see that we've mentioned cold thermal storage and geothermal storage. So there's an overlap in the scope of our RFPs. We would entertain proposals that include those in either category, although we think if you're doing a pure geothermal cooling somehow, it should be under the geothermal topic and not this one. But honestly, geothermal projects are going to be tied to buildings generally, and we think that it's a well-known fact that most of the building stock in Saudi Arabia has not been designed for efficiency. That if you're going to be making renewable energy upgrades to those buildings, you should also, it wouldn't really make sense to be doing that without also upgrading the efficiency measures in the building. And so what we're trying to open up here is the possibility that a combined approach to provide both energy efficiency upgrades and renewable energy upgrades to buildings. We think that, again, is a huge opportunity in the kingdom. Millions of potential targets, I think, and something that we would love to support a good, innovative, and competitive proposal addressing. Renewable desalination. So desalination, of course, is one of the largest energy demands in the kingdom. The desalination is all fossil driven at the moment, and we believe that it's possible to insert renewables into this in a way that will greatly reduce fossil fuel consumption for water. Initially, we think that the opportunities are mostly in off-grid and smaller systems, and we believe there's a lot of places that are sort of outside of the water network and have a need for desalinated water where smallish systems could be done. I would say we wouldn't rule out the possibility of an on-grid desalination project, but it's worth mentioning basically that we consider this an extremely high priority technology area, and so we hope to see innovative proposals in this area as well. So that covered very quickly all of the technology topics. In all of the RFPs, there's a brief section that outlines our thinking on those, and I'll just repeat what I said at the beginning. That's meant to be suggestive and not prescriptive. We are looking for innovative proposals, and we will entertain your creative ideas on this. So now let me turn to the specific requirements that you have to comply with in order to submit a winning proposal. First of all, the concept paper. As I said, you have to submit a concept paper, and it is a 6-page paper, but you cannot submit a full proposal unless you submit a concept paper, because we really need the concept papers for a couple of reasons. One is we don't want you to waste a lot of time writing a proposal that somehow fundamentally misunderstood what we were after. And so we will evaluate all the concept papers, and we will provide feedback on all of them, even if the feedback may just be, thank you for your concept paper, please write a proposal. In which case, that means that we felt that what you proposed is fully compliant with the RFP requirements. If we feel that some element of your program is not compliant or that we have questions about it, we will flag that in our response to you so that you can be aware of it and take steps to address it. For us, the concept paper also will help us to plan for the full evaluation, and we do intend to bring in experts that can really provide top knowledge of all of the aspects of the proposal so that we do a very thorough and fair, and informed merit evaluation of all the proposals. So the concept paper, 6 pages, just tell us what the project is that you have in mind, who the team structure is going to be, what is the business strategy and competitiveness, and how does it benefit Saudi Arabia? And actually, that is all non-binding. The only binding part of the concept paper is the name of the bidder, and you have to tell us the anticipated project cost and cost share, and those are not to exceed numbers in your final proposal. So if you told us that your project cost, KKR cost share was 10 million riyals, your final proposal can't exceed 10 million riyals. That's what we're expecting. And so let me just say that, caution you, you can't be disqualified for asking for more in the early stage. So, you know, make sure you put a number there that's going to be enough to execute your program. The full proposal content requirements. So this is where you'll find this is different from what you're used to bidding on if you've bid on Saudi government programs before, because this is cost sharing. There are certain things that are required. We require a cover letter from the bidder that's a person who has contractual authority committing to your cost share. And if the cost share is coming from anyone other than the prime bidder, you also have to submit a consortium agreement that has been signed by all of the cost sharing members of the consortium. Then there's a technical proposal, and the other elements that I want to emphasize is that you are to submit a business plan, and you will submit the statement of work. We're not telling you the statement of work. You're going to tell us. That statement of work will be customized to your particular project, and it will become a part of your contract. We need to see an IP agreement that demonstrates that you have the necessary IP rights to be able to conduct the business as proposed. And finally, a financial proposal, and we need full disclosure of all of the project costs so that we can independently assess its reasonableness, since it's a cost share program, and we're not purchasing equipment from you. We are providing essentially a grant that is for you to do your own program, and we take no ownership of any of the hardware at the end. So all the more reason why we need to have this kind of financial scrutiny in the program. The technical proposal is a 20-page proposal maximum. We want to have a non-proprietary executive summary. You can have all the proprietary information you want in the proposal, but we would like the executive summary to be non-proprietary. The proposal needs to provide the project description, and there's a lot of emphasis you'll see on the team, who the team is, what's their past performance, and so on. So we want to see evidence that the team that's assembled is a team that really can execute this program. And we need you to give your own assessment of how the KCARE funds are impacting your ability to launch or enhance your business. The business plan content, many people might have more extensive business plans, but we require a maximum 10-page business plan that addresses the things you would ordinarily expect to find in a business plan. What's the ownership structure of the business? What's the IP strategy? What's the business model? What's the value proposition to your prospective customers? How do you expect to be able to compete with other people that might be competing for the same market? A risk assessment, etc. And finally, we do require a financial projection over 10 years that would give us an idea of your ability to earn revenue and an estimate of the jobs that the program will create within the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The statement of work is as it says, you will write a statement of work of what has to be done to execute the project you've proposed. And it should have a work breakdown structure. It should define clear milestones and deliverables. And as I mentioned before, our intention is to take what you submit, possibly with some negotiation, and literally incorporate it into the contract as the statement of work. The intellectual property agreement. So the intellectual property agreement is actually an agreement between the members of your team, which we need you to expose to us. It's not an agreement with K-Care, it's an agreement between your team members. And what it has to show is that the prime recipient has the IP rights that are necessary and sufficient to commercialize the proposed technology or product in Saudi Arabia. And if you can't meet this requirement, you may be disqualified. So this is an important element. The financial proposal, it says in the RFP that there's a financial proposal that's submitted as a PDF and also as an Excel spreadsheet. And I believe, for the most part, the PDF will just be a PDF of the spreadsheet itself. So we're providing a template, and that template has tabs for deliverables, payments, staffing, materials, capital, subcontracts, and travel. And we need all of those fully detailed, and there's space in the template for justification for your basis of estimate of every one of those, and we will examine that carefully. And I'll repeat something I said before because it's important. This is cost reimbursement. Therefore, we require full disclosure of all the costs. And when the project is being executed, all your invoices are required to be audited by an independent auditor prior to submission. And that's to ensure that the costs are accurate and reasonable. And the last point, this is really important, I think it should be obvious because this is a competitive award. You should only ask for the money that's needed to make the project viable. And we think that in many of these instances, certainly if it was a matter of PV displacement of normal electric power systems in something, there's not a lot of cost share required to make such a project financially viable. And if you try to propose something that's more than that, please count on one of your competitors not doing that, and you'll lose, not win. So we want you to win, so keep this in mind. So let me talk about the evaluation criteria that will be applied. For concept papers, we're going to look at technical innovation, soundness of the technical plan, bidder capabilities. These are the things we're looking for. Business case, business fit to Saudi Arabia. But as I said before, there's not going to be a lot of evaluation in the concept paper other than for compliance to the program objectives. This is where the award decisions are going to be made, which is the evaluation criteria for full proposals. So technical innovation is certainly important to us. Soundness of the technical plan is important, but you note that we have applied 30% to the bidder and team capabilities and 30% to the business commercialization and localization. And that means that we're going to really look at your proposal. Is it really a proposal by a Saudi company to do work in Saudi Arabia? I want to say that an international company whose the prime bidder is a local sales office, while legally compliant with our requirements, is unlikely to win an award, because we're looking for companies that are really going to be operating here. We want to see evidence of that in your proposal. The financial evaluation, this is not a low bidder program. Don't feel shy about asking for the maximum amount if your project justifies it, but also don't ask for more money than what's really needed for it. What you'll be evaluated on from a financial point of view is whether it is competitively priced for what you're asking to do and the realism of your bid. And of course, the amount and quality of cost share. Two proposals otherwise identical, obviously the one that's asking for less money from us to do that work will be the one we would prefer. So wanted to just give an example in case that all isn't clear. So here's just sort of a scenario. Uh, let's say that there's a Saudi company called Aleph Ba Air Conditioning. That is a Saudi company that specializes in the air conditioning business and doing installations of air conditioning systems. And they believe that there's an opportunity for a new product line that's incorporating PV-driven cold water storage, let's say. I thought this because happens to be one of my pet interests personally. So let's further suppose that the company is working with, let's say, a Danish company. I'm just making up names here, but let's say there's a company that has a technology that's been demonstrated in Denmark or someplace in Europe, and they want to introduce that technology here. We're assuming that ABAC has obtained a license agreement that's exclusive right to license, exclusive license to market and install those systems in KSA. And what we hope actually that there's companies that have already done that, or that there's companies that are in discussions with things like that, or that companies that have ideas, and our RFP is going to spur you to go and make that happen. So let's say ABAC is planning to do their first installation in a commercial building here. And the initial costs of doing this, because there's startup costs and possibly, establishing your supply chain makes it financially unattractive for the building owner to pay the full cost. And so the cost share would be beneficial in this case. So ABAC has a business plan. They believe they can make money in this. So they submit a proposal to KCARE. And as an example, the solar cooling topic allows a maximum KCARE share of 5 million. This particular example, let's say the total project cost is 4 million, and ABAC is going to ask for half of that from KCARE. So the KCARE share is 2 million, ABAC's share is 2 million, total project cost of 4 million. They submitted a proposal that includes the signed commitment from them to furnish the cost share, a strong technical proposal with a compelling case for doing this, a clear scope of work, financial proposal substantiating all the costs, and a business plan showing how they expect to grow their revenue, and the IP licensing agreement. We received 10 proposals, but this is an excellent proposal, and you win an award. So that's how this is going to work. So please try to think of your proposal in terms of substantiating your business opportunity and substantiating why the KCARE money will help you to realize that business opportunity. General advice, please follow the instructions in the RFP. Please read it. There's a lot of instructions about how we want the proposal formatted, the page count limits, how to submit it, the types of files, and the way we want the files named. We expect to receive a lot of proposals, and it's much easier for us to do the evaluation if you followed our instructions. And if you haven't, you might end up not getting the score that you deserve because we couldn't find your information. So please be sure and follow the instructions. Also, carefully consider what scope of work you're going to propose and the cost share. Is it really what's required to do the job? And is it in line with the maturity-based guidelines that we stated previously? Now, that covers the RFP, except for the things that you'll find in the RFP. There's a set of contract provisions that are stated there, and I want to hit the most important ones that will be of interest to you. All of these projects are going to be structured as joint projects, essentially as research agreements. And that is serving our public purpose and within the mandate that I described on the first charts. we aim to recover our funding through this. So I earlier said this is a grant, but it's actually a grant with a cost recovery provision. And let me explain that. There's a provision for project failure in the contract that says that if the product or service that we funded you for is not being offered for sale by the recipient for a period of more than 1 year within 3 years of the project end date, then we might call that a project failure. And if we did that, we will have certain rights to potentially take a non-exclusive license to the IP in order to see that it be commercialized. We would not take away your IP rights, but we would take potentially a non-exclusive right. And that would be because clearly you're not pursuing the business for whatever reason. It's not intended to be punitive. It's intended to protect the government's rights to try to get a value from the money that we've spent. The funding recovery is that the product or service that you have offered and that was funded, we would like to see, of course, that you'll be very successful and that over a period of 10 years, the revenue that you're earning, we will ask for 2.5% of that revenue. You could consider this a zero interest soft repayment loan, if you will, because what it says in the contract is that after 10 years or until you've fully repaid the amount of this contract, you would pay the 2.5%. So if the business isn't successful or doesn't generate enough revenue in 10 years, you are not obliged to pay the remainder of it. There'll be a review at the end of 10 years to see whether these requirements have been fully complied with. So think of it, basically we're offering you money up front to reduce the risk of your program, and we want to recover our money if you're successful. I don't know if I said this, but just to be clear, it's 2.5% of your revenue until we're paid back or until 10 years, whichever comes first. So in conclusion, this RFP is a new approach to engage with industry, and it provides an opportunity for you as a business to target exactly what you need to launch a business and to get financial help from the government to do so. We're targeting a wide range of technologies throughout the renewable industry, and we hope to see a lot of creative proposals come in response to that. With that, I thank you for your attention. Excuse, you want to say something?
Yes.
Come. So I think hopefully you've been putting your questions into the question dialogue in the webinar portal, and we will we may try to answer a few of those questions, but whatever we can't get to, we plan to save those questions, and we're going to post the recording of this webinar onto the KCARE website. We'll send out a link to that when we have it in the next few days. And we will try to write up answers to all the questions we receive and also post that in the same location.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jones. Here is the Technology Localization Director, Hisham, would like to thank all the participants in this webinar. And finally, I would like to stress on the few points. I would like to say that this is a big chance today for private sector to propose innovative projects in the renewable energy field. And also, we believe that the private sector is a main stakeholder for us in this program and is a key partner for successful of this program. I would like also to say that the program will be sharing a risk with you for you to innovate solutions in the kingdom. And the team here at K-Care and Technology Localization Department will be available to support and answer unneeded questions. We are, as mentioned in the RFP, will be available to talk to you until the due date of the concept paper. Thank you all and wish you a nice day.
I know we have about 10 minutes left, and we will attempt to discuss a couple of the questions. I'm trying to look at them now. One of the questions is, it says, in respect to the evaluation criteria, how do you articulate financial in respect to technology? Are they equally scored? In addition, how many projects could be awarded within the same area? Is there a limit based on the available funding? Thank you in advance. We have quite a lot of flexibility in terms of the allocation of funding to the different topic areas. I would say that we regard all of the different topic areas as equally important, but what happens in particular within, in other words, I guess what I'm trying to say is we will effectively kind of compete all of the topics against all of the others. We have no set upper limit to the number of awards, but you could have inferred from one of the early charts that we hope to make at least one award in every topic area, and we might make 3 or 4 awards in many of the topic areas. So I hope that answers that question. And I'm having a little trouble. How do we? And how do I do this? Sorry, we're new to this technology. Let's try undock. There we go, that helps. When do we have to submit our concept paper? Okay, that was, depending on the topic area, it's either April the 1st or April the 7th. If you haven't seen the RFP already, of course, the RFPs are all in Etimod, so you should certainly download it, and all those dates are in there. And as I mentioned earlier, we will be issuing a revision to several of those RFPs to delay the concept paper and proposal date by 1 week. So the first 4 that were mentioned are due April the 1st, and the remainder are due April the 7th for the concept papers. A question was asked, what about any new patent rights? That's an excellent question. And the answer is that K-Care is making no claims on your IP. If you invent something, it's yours. The only claim that K-Care is making on the IP is in the event that there's a failure to commercialize the technology, in which case we would have the right, not necessarily that we would do it, but we would have the right to take a non-exclusive license in order to drive commercialization of it. And I would also say that it would be our intention in such a case to work with the recipient to try to make it a win-win situation for everybody. So I hope that illustrates our philosophy on this adequately. Where can we find a link to the RFP? If you are non-Saudi, you won't be able to get to the RFP by Etimod, but you could send us an email, and we're happy to share the RFP with anyone. So send an email directly. If you're on our mailing list, we have been sending emails to people, and that's probably how you found out about this webinar. So if you ask us, we will send you a copy. Let's see. Where else are we? Okay, how does K-Care help the recipient team to develop its commercial operations after the successful completion of the project? Do they help us with sales channels? We do not have any plans to do that. So we would informally say we will do that, but we have no. Well, actually, let me correct this. Actually, now that I think about the question a little bit more, we are planning, and it's not approved yet, but I want to just say that this is something that is in discussion. We are thinking of providing another program that will provide end user financial support to buy projects in these same technology areas. So recipients of these programs are expected to be the companies that are actually trying to build and market these projects. The other project that we're formulating would be one that would help get some of your initial customers. And do you, Hisham, would you like to add something to that?
Yes, for the business plan, you're supposed to submit in your business plan by estimation that the amount of market will be available if you succeed in this technology.
One other thing I would add to this is that there are gaps in the regulatory environment in K-Care that may make some of the technologies challenging from a business perspective. And we are working with the relevant stakeholders, and we'll be happy to work with any of the awarded recipients to try to shape the regulatory environment in such a way that really does enable the business. And those should be situations like that should be identified clearly as risks to your business in your business plan. And you know, we would actually consider it a plus that you've acknowledged and really understand the risks that you're facing. Can government universities participate in this projects? And can one bidder participate in more than one project? The answer is yes and yes. Government universities may not be prime bidders, but you can be in partnership with the Saudi private company in any capacity that you both agree on. Did I skip one? Does the company have to be initially working in CSP to submit a polygeneration proposal? No. It would probably be helpful because, well, let's just say that, you know, the qualifications of the program of the bidder are very important to us. So if you aren't working in that, that's fine, but you need to show that you have a company that is capable of succeeding here and with a track record of doing so. I believe we're out of time. There are other questions here, and as I said, we plan to we plan to download all these questions and put answers in the same location where the webinar is posted. And look for an email from us in the next few days with the location for that. So with that, thank you for your attention, and we hope to receive many creative proposals. Thank you.